On February 21, 2024, one driver decided that the rules of the road and the law itself did not apply to him. Behind the wheel of a Wisconsin-plated Audi, Noel Almargo Petonguot made the fateful choice to run when Florida Highway Patrol troopers closed in. What started as a traffic stop opportunity instantly escalated into a desperate flight across Escambia County highways.
And he's making the right turn on Molina, right turn Molina westbound, 482. Don't get it running curve.
In the end, Trooper Pepitoni's pit maneuver brought the chaos to a crashing halt, flipping the Audi into a ditch before troopers moved in. Petonguot was pulled from the wreck and taken to Sacred Heart Hospital for evaluation. Beyond the broken metal, the paper trail painted an even darker picture: hit and runs in Florida and active felony warrants back in Wisconsin. Extradition or not, one thing was certain: his night of running proved that fleeing only adds to the wreckage left behind. On July the 17th, 2024, at 11:39 p.m., a driver in Clayton County turned a routine traffic stop into chaos. Deputies with the Black Hawk unit caught him flying down Interstate 75 at 101 miles per hour. It should have been a ticket and a stern warning, but instead that reckless choice opened the door to a chase that escalated at breathtaking speed.
Coming up to Jonesboro Road, traffic, the speed is 115, traffic light.
Good pit. Roll over. He's in the wrong lane.
By the time the chase was over, the suspect had lost more than just his car. He walked away, facing charges of reckless driving, fleeing law enforcement obstruction, speeding well beyond the legal limit, and damaging public property. His late-night gamble left him with nothing but handcuffs and a criminal record. December 25th, 2023 was not just Christmas Day, it was also the morning a Dodge Charger decided to make itself the star of the show on Florida's Turnpike. Around 2:52 a.m., a trooper clocked the red muscle car screaming past at nearly twice the limit. Sitting behind the wheel was Gene Loom, who apparently thought a speeding ticket wasn't festive enough. So instead of stopping, he tried his luck with a high-speed escape. By the end of the pursuit, Loom's night of celebration had transformed into a laundry list of charges. From DUI and reckless driving to fleeing at high speed, the court filings read like a checklist of exactly what not to do behind the wheel. He even picked up a negligence charge after admitting to mixing alcohol and marijuana before driving. Instead of unwrapping presents on Christmas morning, he unwrapped the reality of a jail cell. December 4th, 2024 started as just another patrol shift on Macon Road. A Georgia state trooper spotted a silver Toyota Camry weaving in its lane, its insurance status just as shaky as the way it was being driven. When the lights and sirens came on, the driver actually pulled over, at least that is what it looked like. But in the blink of an eye, what should have been a simple traffic stop took a sharp turn into something far more dangerous.
Mile marker 14. Mile marker 14. Clear, mile marker 14.
The driver, later identified as 18-year-old Kamari Gamble, would not survive the aftermath of that final move. EMS rushed him to the hospital, but his injuries proved fatal. For a teenager who thought running was the best way out, the chase ended as a tragic reminder that fleeing from the law almost always writes its own ending, and it is never a good one. On September 7th, 2023, the streets of Little Rock turned into a racetrack long before sunrise. At just after 4:30 in the morning, Trooper Jackson Schumett was already out on patrol when a call came across the radio. Local officers were locked in a high-speed pursuit. The fleeing car wasn't just moving fast, it was tearing down the highway at a blistering pace that left no room for mistakes. And in the back of that dark sedan sat not one, but two suspects betting on speed to save them.
I had a 40 liter on 1037. Secondary now. Next 700 round. That's you. Base 120.
In the end, troopers had both suspects on the ground, their vehicle disabled, and a long night of poor decisions etched into the police report. Charges ranged from felony fleeing and reckless endangerment to resisting arrest and carrying stolen property. In the end, a simple choice to stop could have spared them the chaos, but instead, the pavement of Little Rock bore witness to another high-speed disaster. Most traffic stops end with a ticket and a warning, but on the night of February 3rd, 2025, one did not. Trooper Dylan Evans had just pulled over a Dodge Charger that was moving faster than the rest of traffic. At first, the driver, Brandon Williams, played along, acting as if nothing was out of the ordinary. Yet beneath that calm exterior lingered a plan that would turn a quiet roadside chat into chaos across the interstate. The wild run didn't earn Brandon Williams the escape he was banking on. Instead, it left him facing charges ranging from reckless driving to possession with intent to deliver, along with the discovery of marijuana and drug paraphernalia. In the end, the only thing faster than his Charger was the speed at which his luck ran out. June 1st, 2025 had just tipped past midnight when Corporal Ben Ibarra spotted a gray Honda Accord slicing through the darkness on Interstate 530. 90 and a 75 might not sound like much to the thrill seekers, but for a trooper sitting in the shadows, it was enough to spark attention. When the stop was made, the driver's evasive answers and refusal to show ID felt less like stubbornness and more like someone trying to keep a lid on a secret. And when the air got heavy with that kind of tension, it was only a matter of time before it all snapped.
TBI, Scott Hamilton.
When it was over, the driver, Limon Thompson, and passenger Sharon Bryan were under arrest. Between them sat a loaded 9mm pistol with an extended magazine, a silent witness to the choices made that night. Bryan left with only minor injuries, but Thompson's list of charges was anything but minor reckless driving with injury, fleeing, by vehicle possession of a firearm by certain persons, and more. Whatever he thought he might outrun, the only thing waiting at the end was a jail cell. On January 25th, 2024, Florida Highway Patrol probably thought they were pulling over just another truck on the turnpike. But sitting inside that Silverado were three men who had already spent way too much time on the wrong side of the law. The driver, Barbosa, was walking on thin ice with probation, and his buddies Montes and Reed carried their own stacks of convictions. Instead of stopping, they made the classic bad choice: hit the gas and see what happens. By the end of the day, the gamble failed. Barbosa, Reed, and Montes were booked into the Broward County Jail with no shortage of charges attached to their names. Barbosa's history with meth and marijuana only worsened his case. Reed's 8 prior felonies weighed heavily against him, and Montes stacked on new violent charges. What began as a chance to cooperate ended as another chapter in their already long criminal records. February 15th, 2024. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the highway as traffic rolled steadily along. But in that calm stream of cars, one blue SUV broke the rhythm, moving aggressively, cutting through lanes and forcing others aside. Arkansas State Police Trooper Tyler Ashcraft noticed instantly, and in that moment, the calm afternoon transformed into a high-speed test of nerve skill and recklessness. The suspect's flashy display of speed ended abruptly with a PT maneuver that sent the SUV spinning off the road. He tried to salvage his pride by sprinting on foot, but with officers already closing in, the run was short-lived. He was taken into custody and later faced a string of charges for his reckless choices. At the end of the day, his story became just another cautionary tale of someone who gambled with speed and lost to patience training and a steel bumper. June 8, 2025 started like any other day in Dayton, Ohio, but one driver was about to make sure it didn't end that way. Near Steve Whalen Boulevard, a vehicle caught the eyes of officers for all the wrong reasons. The erratic swerves, the disregard for lanes, the way it clawed for speed, it was enough to set every alarm bell ringing. When they realized it matched the description of a car tied to an earlier theft alert, the calm was over. A routine patrol had just turned into a race against a driver willing to gamble with everyone's safety.
We're going to be passing at Main Street, Jefferson Street, exit. We're going to be taking the on-ramp to Main Street, Jefferson Street.
In the end, both men inside that car would see the inside of a jail cell, the driver facing felony charges, the passenger booked for warrants that had been waiting for him. What could have been a quiet Sunday in Dayton turned into a test of how far someone will go to avoid a pair of handcuffs. Spoiler alert, not far enough. On March 28, 2023, just before dawn in Little Rock, Arkansas, the quiet streets were anything but calm. Arkansas State Police Trooper Jacob Bird spotted a suspicious vehicle. Its tag expired and its driver acting anything but cooperative. Inside, multiple passengers shifted nervously, a picture-perfect setup for trouble. What started as a traffic stop quickly unraveled into something far more dangerous, with a firearm fear and split-second choices at play. When the dust settled, that secret lay in the form of a firearm tossed into the night and retrieved near a Walgreens. The driver's attempt to shift blame onto his passengers didn't do him any favors, especially when one woman admitted he held the weapon during the ordeal. With charges stacking up, unlawful possession of a firearm, fleeing coercion, and traffic violations, it was a long list for the booking desk.
You almost messed her eyebrows up. Those are eyelashes, bro. Whatever.
In the early hours of May 4th, 2025, a Florida Highway Patrol trooper spotted something every officer dreads: an overconfident driver pushing a machine to its limits. The car was a Toyota Supra, sleek, fast, and already well past 90 miles per hour. On the stretch of the Gandy Bridge with water on either side and no room for mistakes, the driver had a choice to make. Unfortunately, he made the worst one possible. He refused to stop.
74 and 39, so right to two-door. Detail showing expired last from 4-4-335. You advise that vehicle at the top. Step 4, that's not even numbers in traffic.
The pursuit ended violently, with the Supra striking a pole and bursting into flames. Miraculously, both the driver, Brandon Ramnarine, and his 32-year-old passenger survived with injuries that did not take their lives. Brandon now faces charges for fleeing at high speed, a decision that could have cost him far more than a court date. At the end of the night, the bridge was left scorched, the Supra destroyed, and one driver learning that arrogance burns brighter than tail lights. Blue lights danced in the night sky over Arkansas on March 20th, 2025, chasing down a driver who refused to yield. The man at the center of it all was 54-year-old Joe Versey, pushing his luck from Poinsett County into Crittenden County with a trail of squad cars behind him. What began as reckless driving had escalated into a full speed test of patience and skill. Each mile narrowed the gap, and each passing second brought more officers into the fold. The road ahead would decide just how this story ended, and it wouldn't be pretty. Through the crackle of radios and shouts across the median, the suspect's words cut through the chaos. He had a weapon. Every officer within earshot knew the stakes had just shifted, and the tension in the air was thick enough to stop anyone cold.
Get out or get tight!
When Versey reached toward the weapon he'd threatened to use, officers made the call no one wants to face. The shots fired ended both the standoff and the danger, with the suspect declared dead at the scene. Prosecutors later ruled the response was within the law, a decision that underscored just how high the stakes had been in those final moments. On September 17th, 2025, a quiet afternoon on Interstate 40 turned into something far more dangerous. A blue Ford Mustang with no license plate slipped past an Arkansas state trooper who was parked on the shoulder ready to make routine stops. At first glance, it looked like a simple traffic violation. But when the lights came on, that Mustang didn't just slow down, it bolted, weaving through traffic with reckless abandon. That driver turned out to be Jamarius D. Butler, who admitted later that he ran just to avoid being caught with a single gram of marijuana. That reckless choice turned into a felony case stacked with charges speeding, reckless driving, fleeing, and carrying a weapon. Butler was hauled to the Crittenden County Detention Center, leaving his Mustang smashed and his freedom gone. It proves again that the road is never forgiving when bad decisions meet flashing blue lights. The night of October 14th, 2023 started with flashing radar and a Dodge Charger tearing across Interstate 40 like it owned the road. At speeds topping 120 miles per hour, the car wasn't just fast, it was defiant. Each lane change grew bolder, each swerve riskier, and every motorist nearby suddenly found themselves unwilling extras in a stunt they never signed up for. But on highways like this, every stunt has a breaking point.
I don't work for Tennessee.
Get what?
Come on.
Tennessee governor will be on your ass.
Come on.
I swear to God.
27 is DVI,
You're going to get
40
taken.
westbound.
Show me where
Lay
you're
down.
Show me
MLK, I don't know the exact location.
Get over here.
He's
Lay
kind
down.
of quiet on the radio.
Lay down, man. Thank you.
Lay down.
Thank you for being a man.
Lay down.
Thank you for being a man.
Now, lay down.
I'm gonna lay down. What am I doing?
Stop resisting.
The driver, later identified as DeAndre Brown, fought commands struck at a trooper's arm and ended up tasting volts from a taser before finally going down. Brown was charged with driving while intoxicated, fleeing in a vehicle an assault, with plenty more stacked on top of that. His passenger, Tamara Brandon, also walked away with her own set of charges. In the end, all the bravado in the world could not outrun flashing lights and a trooper who refused to back down. It was the afternoon after Christmas, December 27, 2021, and the interstate was just starting to settle into its winter lull. But in Bibb County, one Ford Ranger was breaking that calm at 90 miles per hour. The driver eased up for a moment, but never actually gave in. Instead, it became clear this was going to be one of those moments where a bad decision snowballs into something far worse.
Seven outside. 17 outside.
By the time it was over, the Ford Ranger was on its side, its driver still belted in and looking dazed. Joseph Silas confessed he had been drinking, his voice tinged with worry about his job. Emergency crews cut him free, and he left the scene in custody. His blood test pending, his truck destroyed, and his driving record permanently marked. In the end, the road decided the outcome long before the paperwork did. On September 25, 2022, just after midnight, a Georgia trooper sat quietly on Pennsylvania Avenue radar at the ready. The streets were still the kind of silence only late-night hours can bring. But that silence shattered when a gold Chevrolet Malibu came flying through at speeds well above the limit. The driver behind the wheel wasn't slowing down, and this was only the beginning of a very long night. The driver was later identified as 27-year-old Rashamel Howard. Troopers discovered he was a convicted felon, slurring his speech, reeking of alcohol, and yet denying he'd been drinking. Inside the wreckage, they also found a firearm he was not supposed to have. Howard was booked into jail, and this chase became another stark reminder that bad choices at high speeds almost always end one way, hard, fast, and costly. On May 14, 2022, a request for backup came in from Smyrna Police Department. A Kia speeding through Atlanta was refusing to stop, and the call quickly made its way to Georgia State Patrol. With adrenaline rising and traffic flying by, troopers positioned themselves to take over the pursuit. Among them was Trooper Ennis Unit 797, who would soon find himself at the center of a high-speed showdown on Interstate 75.
Cleveland Avenue. Page attempted. Page attempted. Forward. Got a big gas coming up 797. Get off the wheel.
After multiple attempts, it was Trooper Ennis's decisive Pete that finally spun the Kia off course, smashing into the barriers and leaving it dead in the water. Both occupants were pulled out and arrested their reckless gamble, ending with Smyrna Police Department handling the charges. What started as a desperate sprint turned into a hard stop, courtesy of a trooper who refused to back down. On March 11, 2023, the night air over Atlanta was anything but quiet. Around 3 in the morning, traffic on Interstate 20 became the stage for two speed demons, a Dodge Charger and a Tesla Model 3 racing side by side at breakneck speeds. The Dodge peeled off into the city streets, but the Tesla, piloted by a driver with more adrenaline than common sense, chose to push his luck. What began as a simple radar reading at 167 miles per hour would quickly spiral into a full-blown pursuit. By the time the chase came to an end, the Tesla was left crippled against a concrete median wall. The driver, later identified as Joseph Smith, reeked of alcohol and was taken to the hospital for evaluation before facing the consequences of his reckless choices. He now carries warrants tied to that night, a sobering reminder of how one bad decision can dismantle not just a car, but a future. In the end, the thrill of speed cost him more than he bargained for. July 8, 2023 started as just another afternoon in Conway, Arkansas, until a gray Ford Mustang turned the highway into its personal racetrack. Local officers with the Conway Police Department gave chase, but this was no ordinary traffic stop gone wrong. As the Mustang pushed past 100 miles per hour, weaving through cars and tossing suspicious bags from the window, it was clear this wasn't just about a speeding ticket. That's when the Arkansas State Police stepped in, knowing the stakes had just skyrocketed.
He just threw out narcotics right before the 127. Excuse me, 125. That's the 125 now.
That's the 125 exit.
That's the 125, threw out narcotics.
Copy that.
After a high-speed clash that ended with a violent spin into the cable barrier, the Mustang was done, and so was the driver's luck. Derek Blevins bolted into the median grass only to be quickly taken down, while his passenger, Shelby Hoffman, was detained at the scene. Officers recovered methamphetamine thrown from the car, adding even more to the long list of charges against Blevins. In the end, his reckless sprint across Arkansas highways was nothing more than a gamble he could never win. The calendar had just turned to the new year, January 2nd, 2023, and 19-year-old Matthew Gaskins was already making headlines for all the wrong reasons. He was a wanted man tied to investigations across nearly every corner of the Atlanta metro area. That morning, East Point Police and Georgia State Patrol moved in to arrest him. But Gaskins wasn't interested in surrendering. Sitting behind the wheel of a stolen Jeep, he had one thing on his mind: escape. The pursuit ended violently, with the Jeep crippled after colliding with a power pole, leaving Gaskins no choice but to surrender. Taken into custody without further incident, he now faced charges from more than half a dozen agencies, each ready to hold him accountable. Property was damaged, troopers' nerves were tested, and yet no lives were lost. At just 19 years old, Gaskins learned the hard way that no stolen car and no amount of running will ever outrun the law. For Trooper Terrell Pratt, June 27, 2023 was supposed to be like any other day behind the wheel of his patrol unit, but the moment he locked onto a silver sedan barreling down the roadway, he knew his shift had just changed course. What the driver thought would be a quick way out of trouble was about to become a high-speed mistake etched into asphalt. The driver's reckless gamble ended with him on the ground, taken into custody as troopers reminded him just how close he came to costing lives. He now faces charges of fleeing reckless driving and endangering the public. No dramatic escape, no heroics, just a trail of broken metal and bad decisions. It was another harsh lesson in how running from the Arkansas State Police only leads to one destination disaster. July 10, 2025 began with one man making a series of choices that would spiral into chaos. Behind the wheel of a Chevy Blazer, Dustin Kirkendall was already wanted for more than just bad driving. By the time Arkansas State Police joined the chase, he had turned Interstate 40 into a high-speed stage where every second brought more danger. Nobody knew how far he was willing to push it. When it finally ended, the driver was identified as 37-year-old Dustin Kirkendall. Officers discovered open containers and narcotics tied to his wild run, confirming he was under the influence. The chaos left 2 officers contaminated with his blood, forcing an unexpected hospital visit. One night, 2 PIT maneuvers and 1 suspect whose arrogance turned Interstate 40 into his personal circus. On the night of September 24, 2023 in Little Rock, Arkansas, what started as a simple traffic stop quickly turned into a dangerous high-speed pursuit. A 2006 BMW with fictitious tags tore down Interstate 30, ignoring every command to pull over. The driver, later identified as 32-year-old Byron Brown, blew through red lights, narrowly missing other cars, as his speed crept past 120 miles per hour.
21.
I have 25 and 37.
Survey, and that is 1063 around 25 and 237 with white BMW displaying Adam David Boy, 870 George. 135 exit eastbound 30.
Now we're going back, 30 westbound. These are 84. TBI.
What's your 20?
By the bridge. Just before Scott Henderson.
In the end, Byron Brown was ejected from the car and tragically lost his life from his injuries. Inside the wrecked vehicle, investigators found a 5.7 semi-automatic pistol, raising even more questions about his intent that night. And it's yet another somber reminder that a single reckless decision on the road can change everything in an instant. September 20th, 2023 should have been just another late shift for Arkansas State Police Trooper Lucas. But instead of quiet roads, he got front row seats to the Fast and Foolish show, two cars racing side by side, clocking speeds that would make any speedometer cry. One of them, a white Dodge Challenger, thought it could outrun the law at 160 miles per hour. Let's just say that was the dumbest decision of the night. The driver, identified as 20-something thrill-seeker Dimitri Barton, quickly learned that metal barriers and police tactics don't bend to ego. His passenger, Amparo Lopez Gomez, walked away with a painful shoulder and the bitter memory of begging him to stop. Barton was processed at the Pulaski County Detention Center after a hospital check cleared him, now facing charges that will stick longer than any fleeting rush of speed. It is yet another story where arrogance hit the gas and reality slammed the brakes. On a quiet November night in 2024, Interstate 30 was supposed to be just another stretch of highway. But one driver stood out, pushing a silver Jeep Grand Cherokee far beyond the construction zone speed limit. When troopers approached the man behind the wheel, identified as Bernard Williams, the third barely cracked his window, mumbled about his license, and scrolled through his phone like nothing was wrong. But the sight of marijuana residue on his lap told a different story. The calm of the stop was about to snap in the worst way.
TBI, about the 109, roll over 1016, please. Do not rush the vehicle.
By the next morning, Bernard Williams was tracked down and taken into custody near a truck stop. His list of charges stacked like a bad poker hand: fleeing in a vehicle, fleeing on foot, reckless driving, possession of marijuana, and even criminal mischief for the damage left behind. Add in speeding, no seatbelt, no insurance, and it was a masterclass in poor decisions. In the end, Williams proved one thing: when you turn a traffic ticket into a high-speed disaster, the only guarantee is that the law will catch up. On May 2nd, 2023, the Arkansas State Police were about to cross paths with a man who had no intention of stopping. Behind the wheel of a red Nissan Rogue was Tigo Caldero, a previously deported felon with a felony immigration warrant hanging over his head and a homicide investigation out of Tennessee. For Caldero, every mile was a gamble, and every glance in the rearview mirror was a reminder of the law that was closing in. Hazen police already had eyes on him, and the question wasn't if he'd make a bad decision, it was how far he'd go when the blue lights lit up.
Come on now, let me get it. Too much traffic. Don't put them right there, we have traffic. We're gonna be stuck. 40 west still. Got to be about medium. We're about 110 right now. We got a pit. Roll over. Pit, roll over. Stand by. Stop here, guys.
Hands, driver! Hands! When the dust settled, Caldero's run was over, and so were any hopes of slipping away unnoticed. He was taken into custody and booked into the Prairie County Jail on charges of aggravated assault felony fleeing and driving while intoxicated on drugs. ICE also lodged a detainer for his deported felon status and outstanding warrant. Some drivers make bad choices. Caldero made one that guaranteed his day would end in handcuffs. On February 16, 2025, Trooper Dylan Evans spotted what should have been a routine traffic violation on Interstate 40. A silver Honda Accord was moving just a little too fast, pushing 86 miles per hour in a 65 zone. It looked like a simple stop was coming, but instead of tapping the brakes, the driver made a choice that would crank this night into overdrive. Within seconds, a calm Sunday evening was about to become a high-stakes chase. The man behind the wheel turned out to be Michael Tate, limping in traffic before being cuffed and sent off for treatment. Inside the car, a handgun sat in plain reach, and the vehicle itself was a mess of fake paperwork and no insurance. Tate's list of charges stretched a mile long, speeding, fleeing possession of a firearm by a certain person, and more. For him, that night ended not in freedom, but in a hospital bed in a jail cell, the kind of destination every runner eventually finds. March 7th, 2024 started as a routine collaboration between the Georgia State Patrol Crime Suppression Unit and Atlanta Police. They were on the lookout for a white Ford Fusion tied to a recent vehicle theft with ground units and the Phoenix helicopter scanning the city. When the car was spotted in a West Atlanta parking lot, things seemed calm enough until the driver decided compliance was off the table. The moment the emergency lights flicked on, the peaceful afternoon turned into a high-stakes gamble on city streets.
Right on the Virgin.
Clear right on Merton.
Coming up to I-20, going I-20.
Clear 20, one on I-20.
Down to 20.
Clear eastbound 20. Clear on pit.
Another pit.
Clear 70.
The driver was later identified as Juwan Jackson, and his run from the law didn't stop when the car did he bolted on foot, making a break through brush fences and train tracks. Even K9 Loco got a piece of the action before Jackson was finally cornered and taken into custody. He was charged with reckless driving, felony fleeing obstruction, and driving on a suspended license on top of existing warrants. Sometimes the fastest way to lose everything is to think you can outrun everyone. July 10th, 2025 started like any other late morning on SR 408 until a flash of gray caught a trooper's eye. That Mercedes GLC was not just moving fast, it was eating up pavement at a rate that made every other car on the road look like it was parked. Behind the wheel sat a driver who clearly had no intention of slowing down for anyone. The trooper moved in to make the stop, but what came next turned a routine traffic stop into a full-throttle showdown.
Hold on, Mario. Don't let me stop. Signal 4 at Pine Hill. Keep going. Passing 450. 450. right, get ready for phone call. 54 pointed if you can. Hold on, Mario. Hold on. Hold me, stop.
The driver, identified as 33-year-old Darius Demetrius Lowe, made one last attempt to escape on foot, but that sprint ended in handcuffs. Lowe, already on inmate release for a previous fleeing case, was found with 27 fentanyl pills, nearly $4,000 in cash and marijuana inside the Mercedes. His bid for freedom not only failed, it stacked up a fresh list of charges that will keep him off the road for a long while. Some drivers run thinking they can win. Lowe just learned the hard way that the odds are never in their favor. It was a normal day in Eco, Arkansas, the kind where most people are thinking about lunch plans, not high-speed pursuits. Corporal Todd Williams was simply doing his job, initiating a traffic stop on a vehicle that gave him reason to pause. The man behind the wheel, later confirmed to be Carlos Smith from Lamar, had other ideas. Instead of pulling over, he punched the gas and left that quiet roadside in a cloud of urgency.
Oh, they have the radio. Short traveling southbound, 127. At Oklahoma. Oklahoma.
Smith's run came to a halt on Oklahoma Street, ending a dangerous chapter that could have gone much worse. Several law enforcement vehicles and a city truck took damage in the chaos, but no one was injured, a rare stroke of luck in a chase like this. With new charges stacked on top of his already long list of warrants, Smith's next ride won't be on open roads. It'll be in the back of a patrol car. That might have been the end of the road for this suspect, but there's another story just waiting to be told. Watch the next video and see why no two pursuits are ever the same. Each one has its own twist you won't see coming. Thanks for tuning in, and be sure to subscribe.